So there it is, Fort Foster. So after the battle, day's battle, then they came back. That was around Christmas, December. They came back in January and started building a whole series of forts to defend the bridges going up the trail. This fort was about a day's march from Fort Brooke. So you march up here, spend the night, march on to the next fort, which is about a day's march. They did a whole bunch of soldiers. There was a regiment from Alabama came out, and they started cutting down the pine trees and building a stockade. It was just a stockade. It didn't have the blockhouses. They called it Fort Alabama. And they stayed. They built it. The Seminoles took shots at them. About a week after they built it. They never really had a major attack, but they were under fire a good bit. And then, right about this time of year, it started getting really hot. A lot of people started getting sick. They called it the sickly season back then.
She escaped.
Yeah, she did. Yeah. And so they abandoned the fort by this time of year, headed back down to Fort Brooke. Booby-trapped the gunpowder magazine, and as they were leaving, boom, started to blow up. So then the next winter they came back out. Colonel Foster was in charge, and they built what you see here, Fort Foster. They were really. Those are authentic. Let's go ahead and head inside the fort before they get into a pitch running battle out here.
You said it was first built in 1835? Yeah.
Got one up the road.
Territory isn't safe. I want you all coming into my office quarters here now.
This is the officers' quarters.
A little bit colder.
It's a lot cooler in here, believe me.
You got loose, did you?
I sure did.
Here you go.
They were distracted by the side of the fort, and I took it.
There you go.
Man, I got one here, Ron. Let me welcome you to Fort Foster. Fort was built here in December of 1836. It was manned throughout the spring of 1837. It was abandoned for the summer. It was remanned in the fall of 37 into the spring of 1838. Part of the Second Seminole War. As you know, on the site where we're standing now, in 1835, Major Francis Dade came through the site with an army of 108 men. The bridge over the Hillsborough River had been burned at that time. They were forced to ford over the river. It took them all Christmas Day. 3 days later, in a place they call Bushnell, they were ambushed by the Seminoles. 108 men went on the field, where 3 men survived the day. One of those was killed on his way back to Fort Brooke. That was the start of the Second Seminole War. This is the War of Indian Removal. Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which says all Indians living east of the Mississippi River must be removed to reservations west of the Mississippi. Now in Florida we had a small problem. The territory of Florida had only become a United States territory in 1821, 1822. 1823 we signed a treaty with the Seminoles allowing them 20 years on our land. Of course 20 years has not expired yet. So we had them sign a second treaty of Payne's Landing. They would agree to remove. What they said is they would agree to send their chiefs to inspect the land. If the land was good, then they would remove. They sent the chiefs out there. They saw the land. Also saw the Creeks and the Cherokees were out there, who were their bitter enemies from Georgia. They had fought with them for years. They thought that if they went out there, they'd be taken over by the Creeks, their slaves would be stolen, and they said they didn't want to go. Well, the government said, well, all right, we went to Fort Gibson and said, we have another treaty for you to sign that says that the land is good. As soon as you sign this treaty, we'll take you back to your families, your wives, your livestock. You can live there for another 2 years, and we're going to move you out west. Eventually, they signed. Time came for them to leave, and they don't want to go. So that started the war. We're out here to kill the Seminoles and really remove them. Now, the first year of the war, the Army went off and fought like they'd always fought wars with baggage trains. They would have columns of troops leave from different areas, one from Tampa, one from Fort King, one from St. Augustine. They were all joined up to meet the troops. One column would get lost, one column would get bogged down in the swamp, and the third column would show up exactly on time and place appointed with 75 men to fight the 300 Seminoles. It did not work well. So the second year of the war, General Jessup has decided he wants to build outposts not more than 2 days march apart. These outposts are already filled up with supplies and ammunition. The Army can go out in small patrols, and after two weeks or so, they fall back here. Sick or wounded or dropped off, they resupply and go back out into the field. This fort here is the first fort that was built on that plan. The spot was chosen because we are at the bridge over the Hillsborough River. So we also protect the bridge from the Indians. Now, if you notice the uniform I'm wearing, this is not an Army uniform, this is a Navy uniform. First 3 months this fort was occupied, it was a naval command. It had naval lieutenant commanding, 2 midshipmen, and 60 seamen, along with about 20 artillerymen stayed here to man the artillery. Anybody any questions so far?
Yeah, so what's this? And what do you use that for?
All right. This is a 12-pound mountain howitzer. Only the Army would decide to send a mountain howitzer into the territory of Florida. This gun is designed, it can be broken down and carried by 3 pack mules. One has a special harness that carries the barrel, one a harness to carry the carriage, the third one carries the limber boxes with the ammunition on it. Unfortunately, we find fighting the Seminoles, by the time you stop your 3 mules, unharness them, assemble the gun, you're ready to fire, the skirmish is over. That's why we have it here as a garrison weapon. We also have a 6-pound field piece, which I'll be showing in a little bit. This gun here fires the big ammunition you see on the rack back here. The big gun outside fires the little ones. I said basically, the forts that were built all had one 12-pound howitzer, one 6-pound field piece. Okay, one thing I point out to you, I've got my map of the territory of Florida back behind you there. On my bulkhead. A lot of people look at the southern part of that state and they think there's something very important missing from the shape of the state of Florida. Territory of Florida. Anybody want to guess what that might be? Big round thing toward the bottom?
Lake Okeechobee.
That's right. Nobody's gotten far enough inland in the swamp to know that there's a lake there yet. By the end of the war, by the end of this year, we're going to know all about it. One of the major battles of the war was fought on the shores of Lake Okeechobee. Right now, the Navy is going in, pushing missions in, trying to cross the everglades, cut off the Seminoles. The war basically started up around COVID with Withlacoochee and has been moving further and further south.
And what would you be doing here on a daily basis?
Now, basically, I'm here to command the fort, and I said it's a naval command. Commanding this fort is no different from commanding a ship, except I don't have to navigate, and I very seldom have to pump out the bilge. But basically what I'm here is I'm keeping track of all the supplies, what supplies we issue to the troops, any supplies become spoiled, to come to the government for it.
And how many troops were posted here on the average?
Like I said, Lee came up here with 2 midshipmen, 60 seamen, and about 20 artillerymen. The Marines were brought in later, brought up to about 150. The largest assignment of this post was 350 men here. Now, at that time, everybody basically stayed outside of the walls in tents. The fort is really an area of refuge. If there's an attack, everybody comes inside the walls. We close the gates when we fight the fort. Now, you notice we have the firing ports along the blockhouses and along all the picket walls. You notice they're elevated. There's a reason for that. Should a Seminole bullet come in through one of the firing ports, it's firing upward. It's going to go up and over my men, not through them. If we were down on ground level, it'd be devastating. When you go outside, you notice that top floor of this building is built about 2 feet wider than the lower floor. And so if the Seminoles manage to sneak up and get up against the wall and try to break their way through or burn their way through, we can prise up the floorboards and fire down into them. And you'll also see there's a small building out here. Everybody thinks it's our doghouse. It's actually a powder magazine. That's dug down about 4 feet into the dirt. So if there's ever an exit with the powder, it will blow up and not outwards.
So you said the men stay outside the walls. Where did you and the other officers stay?
Well, as long as there's room, we managed to get a little bit of comfort.
Right
Yes,
upstairs.
they're right up there. And then the back blockhouse, we also have an infirmary that's set up there for any sick or wounded. Now, sick or wounded who come in here will not stay at this post more than a couple of days. As soon as the wagon train's going down to Fort Brooke, I'll send them down there. If there's any kind of a serious sickness or injury, they'll be taken by scooter down to Key West, which is really the closest main city.